Well, welcome to another exciting week of EllieMD's live educational series. We're thrilled you could join us tonight for a session packed with learning, growth, and inspiration. I'd like to say here at EllieMD, we're more than just a telehealth platform. We're on a mission to help people live longer, healthier lives. Our vision goes far beyond offering great products and services. We believe education is the key to unlocking better health, well-being, and empowering our communities. Each week, we bring you top experts in longevity, healthcare, and wellness to equip you with the knowledge and tools to transform your health and thrive. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing to my very good friend, Sally Sykes. Let me brag on Sally a little bit. Sally is the founder of Empowered Health Consultants and a dedicated advocate for helping patients address the root causes of their symptoms and take charge of their health. A Georgetown University graduate and a holder of a JD MPAFF from the University of Texas at Austin, go Longhorns. She shifted from law to functional medicine after reversing her own type 2 diabetes and losing her father to Alzheimer's. With over 15 years of experience, Sally specializes in optimizing health through personalized lab analysis and preventing chronic disease, focusing on insulin resistance, weight loss, hormones, and so much more. She's particularly passionate about supporting women through perimenopause and menopause, promoting healthy aging and improving libido. Sally helps patients achieve sustainable results through lifestyle changes, supplementation, bioidentical hormone replacement, GLP-1 medications, and peptides, empowering them to thrive. Well, welcome, Sally. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. These calls are so much fun.
I know, I love it. And before we jump in, I always love to ask you this question. How did you get into this? Like, you were a lawyer, you were an attorney, and then you shifted gears and you came into this world. And I love when you tell this story. So please, let's start there. Tell us a
So,
little.
life is crazy, right? So I was, oldest of four kids, the type A. I was like, I'm either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I was a good writer in journalism. So I was like, I guess I'm going to law school. And I was decent at it, right? I was an in-house attorney for the University of Texas system. I drafted legislation, did all that. Well, soon after that, in my early 30s, my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And around the same time, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which, if you haven't read this, it turns out they're calling Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. So if you get type 2, which is, 94% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, overweight, obese, type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, it doubles your risk of getting dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And if you've ever had a loved one suffer from one of cognitive decline like that and watched it, it's really terrifying. It's you lose them before you lose them. And so I just dove into the research, and it was really depressing. There's no cure, right? But I found an excellent book. If this runs in your family, go get it. It's The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Dale Bredesen. Okay. So I read this book, and he has a little table of labs that he uses to prevent Alzheimer's in patients. So he uses optimal ranges, not normal ranges. So he's saying when we want to prevent disease, we need to get you to optimal, not just the normal lab ranges. When you look at normal lab ranges, when you get your labs done, guess what? Those are just the averages of all the sick people getting those labs done at that lab. They're not necessarily representative of good health or for disease prevention, right? And so, as you can imagine, as the American population has gotten sicker and sicker, our normal ranges just are less and less relevant to good health. And so this is what happens when you go into your doctor and you're like, I can't sleep, I have no libido, my hair is falling out, I can't lose weight, I have brain fog. And your doctor's like, well, you're normal. And you're like, are you kidding? Is this a joke? And so I said, I want to be optimal. So I'm like, I'm going to work Dr. Bredesen's program for dementia prevention. Also, I want to know all the optimal ranges for labs. And I couldn't find them anywhere. So I did all the research and I created my own database of them. And now I have my own coaching practice around in-depth lab analysis using those optimal ranges and helping patients achieve whatever health goals they want. A lot of times, whether it's hormone balance or weight loss or dementia prevention, whatever it is. Let's see. I'm so sorry, Liz, that your mom has dementia. Yes, it's really awful.
Yeah,
Can you
but
add in the waiting?
let's dive in. I actually want to, we just launched, so on the topic of Alzheimer's and dementia, and by the way, that's my background. I'm so passionate about it. And I
Yeah,
think that's where we actually started to talk. I
me
was
so.
telling, we have a compliance platform that we use, and you guys may have received an email from Momentum Factor. That's actually Sally's partner's platform. He owns the platform. And I was telling him about Alzheimer's and dementia and my background in that field. And he's like, you have to talk to Sally about this. Like, you guys are going to just hit it off. And so we did. Here we are. But Sally, on that topic, we just launched microdosing GLP-1s. So let's get started on talking about microdosing GLP-1s. Can you share with us the benefits of microdosing GLP-1s and the neuroinflammatory benefits, the cognitive benefits? Let's start there.
So it's incredible, you guys. Part of what I do when I'm working with patients who are on these medications is I'm making sure they get labs before they take their first shot, and then I'm monitoring every couple of months. What is amazing to see, even on microdoses, even before patients have lost any weight, we saw massive decreases in inflammatory markers like the HSCRP, which is risk stratifies you for the risk that you're going to have a severe cardiac event in the next few years, even without losing weight. Patients, their risk of death is going down. And we've even seen it in one patient who happened to get their HSCRP done 1 week. And then again, the next week after her first shot of 1/4 of the standard starting dose. And her inflammatory marker was cut in half already. She hadn't lost any weight yet. That's the power of the medication. But these medications are lowering the risk of heart disease by anywhere from 20 to 50%, depending on what studies you're looking at, which is incredible. We don't have anything that currently does that. That blows statins out of the water. Like, if that was the only thing these medications did, this would be heralded as a huge blockbuster drug. I think there's a lot of negative talk in the media about them just because they're associated with weight loss. But like, if you take all the list of things these medications do, lower inflammation, lower risk of heart disease. You guys, have y'all read the study on semaglutide and kidney function? So
Mm.
kidney function falls drastically when you have insulin resistance, which so many of us do. So you'll see dialysis clinics on, every strip mall in America. It's just where our kidneys are failing with all the high carb, high sugar diet. So they gave semaglutide to patients with kidney issues. This patients on semaglutide, their kidney function improved so much, they had to stop the study in the middle and give the medication to the control group because it was considered unethical to continue and not give this medication to those patients because it was helping them so much with kidney function, which is just incredible. But it's helping lower. I saw someone mention they're on it for Hashimoto's. It lowers Hashimoto's antibodies. We're seeing that really any sort of autoimmune inflammatory condition, which is incredible. They're looking at it for Alzheimer's disease. They're looking at it for any sort of addictive behavior because we know these medications, they work in the gut, right? By slowing gastric emptying. So you're staying fuller longer. They're also working in the brain, right? In the dopamine signaling and the satiety signaling. So that sort of addictive response that I remember when I was severely insulin resistant, and I feel like I'm just a recovering sugar addict. Like, I could go down that path like a heroin addict, right? I could easily go down that path again. But that feeling of like, it's bad for you, but you're doing it anyway. You're hiding the behavior, like all the addiction check marks. I was like, I'm hiding candy corn in my bathroom. Yep. I'm hiding it from my partner. Yep. I'm denying it's happening. I can stop anytime. I was like, yeah, like, all that stuff, right? So GLP-1 medications, they're not just slowing gastric emptying, making you fuller longer. They're actually working in the brain to reset those satiety signals that we had when we were a baby. Like, if you think of a baby who's like breastfeeding, they know when they're full, they pop off and they're just like, wah, get away from me, right? And it's like, if over a lifetime of eating the way the American government told us to, high carb, I grew up in the 80s, they're like, eat low fat, high carb, pasta, waffles, crackers, and that's a healthy whole grains. We're all now insulin resistant. And when we have high insulin, it makes us starving and it makes it impossible to lose weight. And these medications help with that. They just give you a leg up because it really is. I think I mentioned this on a previous call. No one should feel bad about not being able to stop eating carbs without some help and sugar. They're so addictive. And I mention this on the last one, honey? When they do studies with rats, they give rats a choice between sugar, cocaine, heroin, and meth, and they choose the sugar every time, right? So like we're not like morally terrible people that have a hard time getting away from these foods, right? They're designed that way by food companies to sell us a lot of cheap product that is addictive. Kind of, and it's being, some people even compare it to the same marketing strategy that cigarette companies used, which I think is
Oh,
also
yeah. No,
interesting.
absolutely.
I know, right?
Um, can you share with anyone who hasn't heard of microdosing,
Yes.
what does the microdosing protocol, how does it differ from a standard protocol for GLP-1 specifically?
So microdosing is it really should be personalized to the patient, right? So I'm a health coach, not a doctor. I'll say that up front. Wherever you're getting your prescription through its EllieMD or whatever, you're going to work with your doctor on the specific prescription that is right for you. So these medications, they were created by pharmaceutical companies. They have standard dosing, right? You're given this amount for a month and you double the dose every month for 4 months. What we found, that was developed primarily for diabetics. What we found for weight loss and inflammation and other health benefits, that standard dosing is far too high. So when I work with weight loss patients, I am typically sending them to providers who are more flexible. They're using the compounded medications like Ellie does, and they are informed about microdosing and personalized dosing. So typically, those providers are starting patients on 1/2 to 1/4 of the standard starting dose of these medications.
Mhm.
And it just depends. I think 1/2 of the standard starting dose is the most common. You'll see somebody who's, I'm really nervous about this. I'm really nervous about the side effects. I have a sensitive stomach. I'm just not sure. Start at 1/4. There is zero rush to increase your dose on these medications. And it's so important to find out how you react to them. And you can always move up, but you can't undo a dose that's too high for you, right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants to lose weight yesterday, but it's not worth it. And so the microdosing, what we're finding, even on the tiny doses, we're finding health benefits, reduced blood sugar, improved lipid panels, and heart disease risk, right? Lowered triglycerides, lower HSCRP, that inflammatory marker you may never have heard of, but y'all write that down. HSCRP, it stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein. That's one to add, ask your doctor to run. That's one to really, in that and fasting insulin. They never check those two. And those are so important for metabolic health. And you'll see those improve. Takes a little longer for the insulin to come down, but even on the small doses. And what happens is people start to feel better, and then they can make the changes that they need to make. Because I think I know in my case, when my blood sugar was high and I was insulin resistant, it affected my executive function and also my mood. And you wouldn't think that's related to weight, but it certainly can be. It's much harder to follow through with a new eating plan if you're brain foggy, right? And everything seems overwhelming. Whereas, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like if you just start low, go slow. And what's great about the microdosing too is that it's allowing more providers to reach more patients before they get extremely sick. Because right now, I mean, up until now, these medications have only been available to patients with a BMI over 30 or BMI over 27 with an existing comorbidity, right? So you already have to be sick and suffering to qualify for these medications. It's just madness. So it's so much easier to prevent, like in my case with trying to prevent Alzheimer's, than to clean this up on the back end. And I think EllieMD, you're way ahead of the curve on the microdosing. It is so much cleaner to get someone who is in perimenopause and just gained 10 pounds out of nowhere. Maybe they're still in a normal weight range, but they're inflamed. All of a sudden, they've got maybe some Hashimoto's antibodies. They're dealing with just their loss of libido, because inflammation can lower your libido and mess with your hormones, and it's all connected. And you start addressing that now, then
Mm.
down the road when you are full on type 2 diabetic, or you have fatty liver, or
Oh,
any other number of diseases, it's just
golden advice. Thank you. It's better and easier to prevent than
100%.
free once you're far gone. On that topic, I was actually watching Dr. Tina. If you guys
Love
haven't heard of
her.
her, love her. Go follow
Thank
her, listen to her talks, and she talks a lot about microdosing, and she talks about. I think we posted that segment about the immediate effects that she noticed when she started microdosing. Can you talk to us about some like instant, immediate effects that people can experience, like brain fog goes away? And can you just share maybe your own experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, early on, I would see things like a patient, more than one patient would come in. They had ADHD and had been on Adderall for 20 years, right? And they started to notice that they didn't need to take their medication as long as they came in and got their shot every week, which was crazy to me. But now I've seen that quite a bit. Um, I had a friend with alcohol use disorder who was just using the medication to lose weight. And this was early on, one of my very first coaching clients. So we didn't know that it helped lower cravings for alcohol at that point, but it almost made her like she was almost in tears after being on it for a couple of weeks because she never thought she could lower or moderate her alcohol consumption. And she was able to, drive home from parties and put her child to bed and not only lose weight, but it was so much more than that it was impacting her. Yes, she got to her optimal weight and she is still maintaining on, she does a small dose every 2 to 4 weeks. And that's all she does. And she maintains, but it keeps her on the straight and narrow. We had another patient who had a terrible GI issue after she went to Mexico. Hopefully that doesn't happen to me. And she was going to the Mayo Clinic. She had been to the Cleveland Clinic. They were saying, we don't know what this is. She's just terrible GI. We're going to have to give you cancer drugs. And this functional practitioner that I work with said, we're seeing massive reductions in inflammation, like in gastritis and all these kind of things. Would you consider microdosing to see if that would help? And she did one shot and she called the next day and said she was 90% better. Right. Mm. And then there was somebody else who had chronic, like, I think it was like like something where she had basically had diarrhea all the time, could not control her bowels. Same thing. She has not had an issue since she started microdosing. And I think 2 years now, she owns her own business. Like she's like with it woman. She's had a lifetime of having to be near a bathroom and it's just gone. I had another patient who was a model of all things, right? And she came in, but she was older, had kids, and she was like, I feel kind of bad about this, but I have a shoot in California. I need to lose 5 pounds or whatever. And we were like, okay, the practice that we worked with, the practitioners were like, we'll just microdose you and see if that helps, we'll do that. She came in the next week. She was like, I have had psoriatic arthritis, scalp psoriasis my entire life as a child, and it's gone for the first time. Scalp psoriasis on a microdose. So she hadn't lost any weight actually, but she was like, can we continue to do this just for this? And so I've seen it with psoriatic arthritis. So any sort of joint pain, muscle pain, chronic pain. If you overdose these medications, you will have GI issues the other way. But what we're seeing with microdoses is that a lot of these GI issues, especially if you're combining it with smart diet and lifestyle issues, right? If you've got GI issues and you haven't gotten rid of gluten, dairy, and alcohol, okay. Or at least tried one of them because those are so inflammatory. But yeah, it's we're just tip of the iceberg what we're doing here, not to mention what they're doing for patients who've been struggling with binge eating disorder for years and years and who finally have some relief from that constant chatter of just not being able to fill the void. But
so someone asked, is it better to microdose on semaglutide or tirzepatide? What's your opinion on
whichever one you can get your hands on and whichever one is affordable to you, right? So we still have access to tirzepatide compounded for now, right? If you guys who may not know, the pharmaceutical company that makes Mounjaro and Zepbound, those are the brand names. I don't know, someone is knocking at the door. Those are the brand names of tirzepatide. They have been going hard after the compounding pharmacies, trying to get them to not be able to provide this medication anymore, which is really heartbreaking because the brand names are in shortage. You can't adjust the dose when you get the injector pens. So people are overdosed and sick as a dog, and they're $2,000 a month. They're not affordable. And so Eli Lilly told the FDA, no, these medications are not in shortage anymore. You have to take it off the shortage list, which means if it's not on the shortage list, compounding pharmacies can't make it. They somehow convinced the FDA that they were not in shortage, but now it's being challenged in the courts. So I'm hopeful we'll still have access to tirzepatide. Semaglutide is still fine. Whichever one you can afford. Semaglutide is cheaper than tirzepatide. 99% of my coaching clients start with tirzepatide because of the cost and because it works great for vast majority of people, especially when you're microdosing, right? So, and if you have any issues with side effects, like if you're gonna have side effects that tend to happen in the first couple of months, reduce your dose, start splitting your dose. You can do that to kind of reduce side effects. But if you continue to have side effects that are bothersome after a couple of months, talk to your doctor about switching. And yeah, if you can afford it, try it. Absolutely. But I would say most of the patients do great on semaglutide.
Mm. But before we transition into talking about libido, have you read or experienced or know about, or can you talk about semaglutide, tirzepatide, GLP-1s effects on libido?
So this is really interesting. I've studied this libido a lot because so many of my patients, both men and women, are struggling with that. Did you know it turns out that 30% of our issues with libido in this country are due to poor cardiometabolic health, right? It affects blood flow and it affects our hormones, right? So it's really interesting. So when I already talked about 94% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, meaning we're overweight, obese, pre-diabetic, or diabetic. 94% of us, right, including myself. So with the type 2 diabetes, that means that our hormones are getting hit by this in a big way. What happens to men and women when we become insulin resistant is slightly different, though. When men become insulin resistant, their testosterone falls. When they get excess adipose tissue, it aromatizes their testosterone, meaning it converts it into estrogen. They get man boobs. They get erectile dysfunction, low testosterone. Women, when they get insulin resistance, it often manifests itself as PCOS, right? Which is one of the most common causes of infertility in this country. And one of the hallmarks of PCOS is that the insulin resistance, the weight gain, but it's also high testosterone or high androgens. So it's interesting. You have insulin resistance for men causing low testosterone and high estrogen. And for women, it's causing the opposite, right? So women with PCOS and insulin resistance, they'll start growing a beard, losing hair up here. They have trouble losing weight. They'll get acne. And so when you even at microdoses, or if you have a lot of weight to lose, you can use regular doses of these medications, can reverse PCOS and bring those hormones back into balance so that you're not only restoring fertility, but a healthy, balanced, fertile menstrual cycle goes along with a healthy libido, right? And that is the same for men. When they lose the weight and they restore insulin sensitivity, they lose the visceral abdominal fat, they tend to their sexual function tends to come back, which is super exciting.
Yeah, on the topic of GLP-1s and microdosing, are there specific groups of people who can benefit more from microdosing GLP-1s rather than using a full dose? I think we touched on this, but maybe elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best candidates for the microdosing are people who are, with more of an abnormal weight. They are already sort of, more optimized on thyroid and hormones and nutrients, and they're really looking to fine tune. If you're very insulin resistant, if you have a lot of metabolic healing to do, if you're overweight or obese in those different BMI categories, you might need a higher dose, right, to get you to your goal weight and get your metabolism healed. And we look at the programs I work with, we're looking at specific metabolic labs to determine and optimal ranges to determine if your metabolism is healed and whether it's safe to now go off the medication and maintain. But I think it works. The microdoses work best. If you're trying to microdose and lose 100 pounds, it might work. But if you're 100 pounds overweight, it's more than likely that you have some pretty severe insulin resistance. And, you'd want to ask your doctor to check your fasting insulin. But if you have a fasting insulin of a 24 or a 40 and you're microdosing, it's going to be a really, really slow going, right? So just expectations, right? If you are in perimenopause, menopause, or andropause as a man, you are not replacing hormones. It's going to be very slow going. You might need higher doses. A birth control pill as a woman, a younger woman, slower going.
Well, I would just recommend if you're above a BMI of 27, like we recommended, go on the weight management. And if it's
Yes,
below that, I mean, I think that's a good, fair
exactly.
benchmark, right? Exactly.
Exactly.
So let's shift gears and talk about libido.
Okay.
Hey, because I want to give PT-141 the respect it deserves.
So much.
We're going to talk about that. So can you tell us why our libido begins to decline, men, women, as we get a little bit older?
Yeah. So we already talked about a little bit. We're in poor metabolic health. So that's the heart disease piece. But as we get older, men and women both, for men, it's a more gradual decline in their testosterone. So they might not notice it's happening, but it's not this precipitous fall like women have. Really, after the age of 35, we're looking at what's called perimenopause, which your hormones start to fall. We start to lose progesterone because we're not ovulating every month. Progesterone is the calming hormone that helps us sleep, helps prevent anxiety, progestation, right? And it's created and produced in the ovaries when we ovulate. And as we get older, we're not ovulating every month, even if we have a period every month. So people always talk about testosterone being so important for libido, but I always say it's all three hormones, right? You need testosterone for libido. It's your confidence, your mojo, your just it's that feeling of wanting to get out of bed in the morning and get dressed and put on makeup. It's like, all right, I got this. But progesterone, I think, is so important too, because it helps so much with sleep and anxiety, right? Like every woman I know, like if you ask them if they're in the mood to have sex, if they're anxious and exhausted and because they haven't slept, that's a hard pass. So getting all three hormones optimized, right? In perimenopause, you may or may not need estrogen, but estrogen is huge too, because right, as it helps with the lubrication, because that lubrication can fall for women as we get older. And that can make sex painful. And who wants that? I actually had, I mean, if it's okay to be kind of really frank about my own story, but this might hit home with somebody else. I was on the birth control pill for 20 years and I had extremely painful sex the entire time I was on it. And I had no idea that was the cause. But it turns out synthetic hormonal birth control is basically like chemically induced menopause. It took my testosterone to zero, like undetectable. And as soon as I went off of it, I've had nothing but wonderful, perfect sex ever since. And I'm so angry that no one ever told me that the birth control pill can take your testosterone to zero and make sex so painful. Like that's exactly what it was. And the doctor was, you know what the doctor told me when I told them about that I was having painful intercourse in my 30s? Just keep doing it or your husband will leave you. Do it anyway. I was like, you're gross. I'm done. I'm done with. And so, I mean, this is why I'm doing functional medicine, right? You guys, I'm like, we just have to figure it out on our own. And then we can find the best practitioners to help us. But yeah, there's some bad stuff out there.
No, we talk about that. You have to become your own best advocate
You do.
around time. And then
You
you can
really
advocate
do.
for other people around, but you have to. And progesterone when it comes to depression. Oh my
Oh
God,
my
it's
gosh, you
anxiety. And
guys,
it's been a game changer in my life, in my personal journey, health journey. Progesterone
it's,
has
oh,
been
I totally agree.
combined with DHEA to manage the cortisol and
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I've
Can
been
we
doing,
talk about that?
yes,
Stress and how that affects our hormones and our libido. Can we touch
it
on that
does.
too?
It does, right? Okay, so the building block for every hormone in the body is cholesterol. And then we have these pre-hormones, DHEA and pregnenolone. DHEA is going to, break down into estrogen, testosterone. Pregnenolone, I actually have some pregnenolone cream over there on my counter. I love it. This is one that doesn't get to talked about a lot, but it's really great for stress management. And it's over the counter. Um, it breaks down into progesterone and cortisol. So when you're really stressed out, your body's going to steal pregnenolone. They even call it the pregnenolone steal and use it preferentially to make cortisol. And you're not going to have enough progesterone. Remember, progesterone is that calming hormone that helps you sleep. So now you got high cortisol, low progesterone, and you're just feeling like terrible. So I love things like DHEA and pregnenolone, especially in perimenopause, because it's just boosting your body up. They've even shown DHEA supplementation in women who are on synthetic hormonal birth control. Maybe you don't have another option. You just really have to prevent pregnancy. can help boost testosterone levels for women who are on the pill, right? So they at least have something instead of it going to zero like it often does. So yeah, I think there's some great options out there, but it's nothing. I always like to throw this out there. If there's somebody out there thinking your low libido is your fault, or it is something that you have to fix, there are so many things that go into low libido. And if you're in an unhealthy relationship, for example, that is not your fault. And there's a reason you're not attracted to your partner, and that's legitimate. And you deserve help, and you deserve to be listened to. So there's no amount of hormones or PT or anything that is going to make someone treating you poorly okay. And that is not your job. But if you have a really good, healthy relationship and you're both working on things together, there are, hormones and PT, and even I've been doing low dose Cialis actually too. That has been an interesting but that one is, you have to be really low dose on it, but it helps with blood flow.
Now, are there gender differences when it comes to libido, and the experience, and I guess the age too? When does it hit women? When does it hit men? When does it affect their bodies?
I think men have get a little bit more longevity out of it. I think there's so many factors for women that go into libido. It's not only physical, like the lubrication and the arousal, but it's also in the brain. So when we're talking about PT is really interesting. PT-141, it works in the brain and the arousal centers, and this is why it's FDA approved for the treatment of specifically women with hypoactive sexual desire or low libido. It does work on men as well. But that's because most of our issue with libido happens in the brain, and it's not about blood flow. Some of it is blood flow, and that's why a little low dose Cialis can help too. That's a blood flow issue. And that's where Cialis and Viagra are more helping with the men to get the blood flow going to help with erections. But we're more mental. We're a little more mental. And so we're balancing hormones. We maybe have just had a baby. That's going to affect our libido. We're balancing, work and our metabolism and our nutrition and everything else. There are so many things that go into it. But I like trying all the things, and it's fun to say that at 51 I have a better libido than I did at 41. And it's just, yeah, it's really nice. Like there's a creator on Instagram, I think it's like Marcella Hill, and she has great content about menopause. And she's like, we want to want it. It's not that we are like, we want to want it, right? But we just don't. And so like, doctors need to help us, right? And so, yeah, I think it's really nice if you can find the combination of, work with someone to get the hormones balanced, your metabolism in check, the insulin resistance fixed so that that's not further messing up your hormones. And then you can try some the PT-141. You guys, do y'all know anything about it? Do you want me to talk
Yeah,
about
I call it the Barbie peptide because it makes you hot, it gives you a little tan, and it makes you skinny. So let's talk about PT-141. You touched on it. Let's go in and talk about how it works. What is it? Break it down for us.
Okay, so it's a small subcutaneous injection, just like semaglutide or tirzepatide, right? It typically is injected in the abdomen, just like the GLP-1 medication is. You're gonna want to, whatever dose your doctor tells you, it's usually a tiny starting dose, and then I think they allow you to titrate up as needed. I have never needed to go past that little baby dose. More is not more in a lot of these. Okay. So just let me warn you. And I think I have not you can have a little bit of flushing and nausea. So some people get really excited about these things and just are like, well, I'm just going to fix the problem and we're just going to do more. Don't do that. Listen to your doctor, follow the instructions on the pin pad. If you need more, you can work with your doctor to go up a little bit, but especially your first dose when you're kind of figuring out how you react to it. So my partner has a little more flushing with it and nausea with it than I do. I'm just like, I'm great. But the cool thing is, this is a question I get all the time about PT. Does it make you just feral? Like, are you taking it? Are you running around like I'm out of control with my libido? No, it does not. So it's subtle. You'll know you're taking it when you're in a situation with your partner and something starts to happen and you're more responsive and you're like, oh, that feels better than it usually does. But it's not like you're running around like you can't focus on work and you feel like a 13-year-old teenage, middle school boy or something like that. It's not like that at all. So don't be afraid of it that way. But it can cause a little bit of darkening of the skin. So yes, so they call it the Barbie peptide, and some people have said a slight decrease in appetite. So really interesting.
Now, does it help with vaginal dryness? I get this question a lot.
I haven't noticed that. So you guys, absolute number one best thing for vaginal dryness is topical estriol cream. This is prescription. Actually, you can get it over the counter too. Get it from a reputable source. But estriol is different from estradiol. Estriol is a weaker estrogen, but it is the best for vaginal dryness. So anyone, even if you've had cancer, you can use vaginal estrogen, and you should. It is so important for the health of your tissues down there, for preventing chronic UTIs. You don't know how many coaching clients I have. They've been having UTIs constantly for years, and their doctor has never, they're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they're perimenopausal, menopausal, and their doctor has not given them a prescription for estriol cream. And it's so basic. It keeps women out of the ER. One of the things besides breaking a hip that really leads to the demise of women as we get older turns out to be these chronic UTIs that go systemic, and then their kidneys fail, right? So little topical estriol cream down there, night and day. And do you, honey, know the other secret about estriol cream?
For skincare.
Yes. So I always say, like, it plumps everything up and makes it juicy down there, but also like on your face. Like that's the only thing I use on my face is estriol cream. Like, it's just.
Do we have a future product? I think so.
Honestly, no, I get you. You should. I mean, it is over the counter. Like, it would be great. I would love to have one with good ingredients that doesn't have like paraben, the junk that, is with, like, I buy mine over the counter right now. And, but even the ones you can get at prescription, I'm like, butylated what? Like, I would like one that has, in just coconut oil or something nice.
And Sally, I guess, what are the differences between men and women taking PT-141? Like, are there differences that they can expect?
So I think what we have experienced is I am just more sensitive, so easier to have an orgasm. Orgasms are more intense and fun, and can come in multiples, which is really fun and helpful. So, and then, let's go back a little bit. So you're going to inject this medication if you're going to experiment with this. I think one of the biggest question is, when does it take effect and how long does it last? So for me, it takes about 4 hours to take effect. When I was reading about it, it says like 2 hours or something. For me, it's more like 4 hours. And that's kind of what I've seen too. So, and like I said, you don't really notice. You take it, then you kind of forget about it. And then if you've got a date that night, you're like, oh, you will notice. You will notice as soon as you start playing with your partner that it's working. And then as far as men, it just seems to be stronger, longer erections, right? Lasting longer, staying harder longer, which is really important to men. And it's just fun. It's just nice to have. A lot of guys are combining it with Cialis and Viagra. But that's something you want to discuss with your own doctor. And again, stay on the low dose. I think the men have more issues with the flushing and the nausea than women do. So,
and guys, for the record, we offer both the nasal spray and the injection. So,
nice.
We offer both. Yeah.
That's excellent.
So you touched on how quickly it works. You said roughly 4 hours. I haven't noticed the difference between the nasal spray. I guess it's a little bit more faster acting.
It might be, yeah.
Now, is PT-141 safe for people with underlying health conditions like heart disease or diabetes?
Yeah, so it can raise your blood pressure a little bit. So if you have high blood pressure, a lot of these peptides, right, are really best used once you've I always say, get your metabolic health under control and your hormones optimized or thyroid optimized, nutrition optimized, then add on these peptides in the end, right? Because you're not going to fix a poor diet or a poor metabolism just by piling on excess, different peptides. So yeah, like I did have a coaching client with obesity who tried PT at even a small dose, and it raised his blood pressure. And so he's going to wait to do that again until he reaches his health goals and can go off his blood pressure medication, and hopefully he'll work toward that. But yeah.
Now, besides PT-141, do you have any other recommendations as far as peptides go? I know Sermorelin, for example, some people have experienced great results with Sermorelin, NAD, but can you touch on that, or even peptide stacking? Some people stack. Are there
Some
other
people
options?
do. So yeah, and I've been really looking into the growth hormone releasing hormones like Sermorelin. I just was listening to a podcast on GLP-1s, and this is fascinating, especially considering the battles with the compounding pharmacy battles that we're dealing with. They're looking into compounding GLP-1 with growth hormone releasing hormones like Sermorelin to prevent muscle mass loss on these medications, because these help boost growth hormone. And that, if you can combine a medication with something else, so it is not substantially similar and it's not a copy of the brand name, you compound it. You've just gotten around the rule. I think it's a little more difficult right now for them to say, because right now they're compounding pharmacies are compounding it with like B12 and NAD plus, which is fantastic. But they can basically say, oh, that's still just a copy of our drug. But if you're compounding it with something like a growth hormone releasing hormone that is doing something that the regular medication on its own cannot do, I'm fascinated to see. That's the first time that I'd heard of that. So stay on the lookout for that. And I think there are ways to prevent muscle mass loss. If you meet your protein goals and you're lifting and you're keeping your dose low and slow and you're not losing too much weight too fast, you can build muscle very easily on these medications. It's not the peptide that causes muscle wasting. It's excessively rapid weight loss and too high of a dose. So
That's with or without
you're
GLP-1s, by
muted.
the way.
Let's see. This meeting, not hearing anything, turn up volume.
Oh,
Now you're back.
yeah, no, we're here. Everyone can hear. No, but that goes with GLP-1s or fast. It doesn't matter how you lose the
No.
weight. You lose muscle. That's why it's very, very important to exercise, get your protein in, and
Yeah.
do high resistance training. How about NAD? Do you have experience with NAD that you could touch on?
Yeah. So one of the practitioners I work with, they prescribe the semaglutide they prescribe is compounded with NAD plus. And that's been really nice because sometimes people will experience a little bit of fatigue when they start a weight loss journey. And because especially with a GLP-1, it's helping you lower carb and sugar consumption. And your body is sitting there going, wait, what's happening? I only know how to burn carbs and sugar. I don't know how to burn fat for fuel yet. So you have a little bit of fatigue in the beginning while your body is learning to burn fat for fuel and ketones and run on ketones in addition to sugar. So that really, the NAD plus helps with mitochondrial function, right? Cellular turnover, and just boosting energy as you're losing weight. So it can be very helpful. And you can get it done. I think you guys offer the subcutaneous injections. Is that the form that y'all?
And we have the nasal spray too, right?
And the nasal spray. That's fantastic. I love that.
Mhm.
You'll see it in IV form too, but you don't, what I understand is that it's extremely painful to get done as an IV. So, yeah, I'd much prefer.
Now we touched on menopause, perimenopause. You get that stubborn belly fat if you're a woman. What can we do about that besides GLP-1s? What can we do about the belly fat?
Belly fat is carbs, gluten, sugar, and alcohol. Sorry, that's the facts. I know it's so terrible. So I always say, like, if it feels overwhelming, just pick the one that you think is like the easiest for you to try. That's what I did. I was like, like, I was so upset, but it really does. Like, just pick something. For me, alcohol was easiest thing to give up first because I never was great at drinking. So I was like, all right, we'll do that first. But for some people, they're like, I'm already half gluten free, so that is going to help reduce my carbs. That's huge. It just is. If you have belly fat, it's 99% what you're eating. And yes, you want to be able to lift weights and build muscle mass. That helps to maintain your metabolism, but you can't out exercise a poor diet, right? And so, but the GLP-1 medications help us to get there and get us kind of out of that addictive loop. So there's that. But there are a lot of you out there who are doing all the things. And I know, and I see you, you're doing all the things. You're low carb, you're Whole30, you're exercising, you're lifting weights, and you're still not losing weight. Those patients, if I do your labs, I'm typically seeing low hormones in perimenopause and menopause, and your doctor is just not telling you, they're not doing a full hormone panel. You've typically got an underlying thyroid problem that is not being optimized by your current provider, right? Maybe you're just on a T4 only medication and just with an endocrinologist who's not doing a full thyroid panel. We've got nutrient deficiencies, underlying inflammation. So, or you're on some kind of medication that is causing weight loss resistance, like steroids, right? You do a steroid pack, you'll put on 10 pounds in a week. And you'll be like, what is going on? It's terrible. If you're on the birth control pill, right? SSRIs. We didn't even talk about the effect of SSRIs and birth control pill on libido. Like, you guys, it's incredibly tough. And, women are not told this. Like, I was on both birth control pill and SSRIs for about 10 years. I don't think I had an orgasm for a decade. It's kind of, yeah, it was terrible. And I just was too embarrassed to tell my doctor. And even if I had, they would have been like, oh, I guess that's just because you're had kids now. I guess that's how it is. No, it's not how it is. Okay.
Guys, post your questions. We want to get to them because
I
we have
know. Let's
about
see.
10 minutes. So I have someone that asked, can you take PT-141 and testosterone? Do you do a
Oh, yeah,
combo?
I do. Yeah.
Yep, fair enough. What about weight gain after a hysterectomy? Sorry, we're bouncing around.
Yeah. So if you've had a hysterectomy, right, you've had your hormone producing organs removed, you should be offered hormone replacement therapy, right? Like, and if you're not, I would maybe find a new doctor. But we have a choice in how we age, right? So yes, menopause and perimenopause are natural, but we live a lot longer than we used to. I would be dead by now in childbirth, right? Instead of 51 and thriving. So I could choose not to. I am taking estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, all three. If I wasn't right now, I would be a hot mess of metabolic health. Okay. So if you can choose not to replace hormones, but know that you will increase your risk of heart disease, dementia, osteoporosis, osteopenia, which is your loss of muscle mass, right? Like, if you don't have testosterone, you can't build muscle mass even if you're lifting. So, even if you think I'm doing fine, right? It's the patients who actually have the hot flashes and get to the doctor and get their hormones replaced that are actually the lucky ones, because you're still increasing risk of heart disease and dementia and all of the other issues when you don't replace hormones. So it's a choice of how to live. I will die with all three hormones in my body. I just will. But it's a choice between you and your doctor. But I think it makes a huge difference in our metabolism and our libido, our brain health, our mood, everything. And I'm all about preventing disease before it happens. And so there's so much new great data about hormone replacement now.
I love that you share this information. So someone asked, we're talking about microdosing. If I have 25 pounds, what recommended dose? We recommend going to the weight management section. Anything over 10 pounds, I think you can benefit from weight management. But again, check your BMI. Which estrogen do you recommend? Can you take HRTs if you've had a family history of cancer? Oh, that's a good one.
Yes.
Let's touch on cancer, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about estrogen. And I mean, some of these hormone replacement therapies actually protect our bodies against cancer. And for decades, doctors have been taught that no, be careful, be careful. But let's touch on that actually, cancer and BHRTs.
Yeah, so bioidentical hormone replacement is not associated with cancer risk, you guys. So the Women's Health Initiative that was 20 years ago, that was responsible for taking all of women off of hormones, was the biggest misjustice of health ever done to women in the history of my parents' generation. they're a hot mess of health right now because they were ripped off of hormones. So there was a slight minuscule increase in cancer among the patients taking the fake progestin, literally not the same molecule as actual bioidentical progesterone. Okay. No increased risk in estrogen, just in the group that was taking the fake progestin that's like in a birth control pill, right? So if you're taking the bioidentical, like just think about it this way, right? If hormones cause cancer, there would be an epidemic of cancer among young, healthy, fertile women, pregnant women who have extremely high net levels of net. That's madness, right? So if you're concerned about cancer, and this is what the saddest part is, right? I have good friends who are so concerned about getting breast cancer and they won't do hormone replacement. They're in terrible health. They drink a bottle of wine every night and they're overweight or obese. Those drinking alcohol and being overweight or obese are the two of the top causes of cancer there is. The other two are smoking and UV radiation. So I'm like, you're probably gonna get cancer. I'm like, it's heartbreaking. But no, hormones are amazing and you can work on them with your doctor to find the right dose that works for you. Every woman is going to be a little bit different. You're going to work with them to find your optimal dose of all three hormones. During perimenopause, it can be a little different. You know, everything is kind of fluctuating, but that's okay. It's worth it. Do not give up. Like, I always recommend getting all three prescriptions. You asked about the type of estrogen. So typically you're going to be replacing estradiol. That is the primary young woman's estrogen, right? That is so critical for our heart health and our brain. Feeling sexy, it like sort of gives you a waist as a woman. Just makes you feel like a woman. And it's going to be oral. When you take estradiol, it's typically in a generic patch. That's one of the most common ways that people do it. It's cheap. It's prescription. You can get it at any pharmacy. The most common progesterone is going to be prescription oral micronized progesterone. That's what you take at night. I've got it over my bedside table. It helps with sleep and mood. And then testosterone, most often women are being prescribed a compounded testosterone cream. I prefer injections because injections convert to DHT at a much lower rate than the compounded creams do. So if you're experiencing hair loss, find a doctor who is willing to prescribe injections for you because it stopped my hair loss. So very helpful. And then the estriol cream, that is the topical for down there. So you can do estradiol in a patch. Okay. That's your systemic estrogen for your whole body health. Then you can get a separate prescription or over the counter for estriol cream that goes down there for moisture, lubrication, tissue health, UTI prevention, and on your face.
Someone's asking, where can we get this recording? We will post it on YouTube. We're going to have it on, podcasts and Apple, and we'll have it out there. Just check on our Facebook page. You'll get this. But thank you so much, Sally. Any final words, and where can we find you? Talk about some of your services, what you do. I know you touched on that in the beginning, but maybe you could share what you offer as part of your coaching service and where can we find you?
Yes. So you could just go to empoweredhealthconsultants.com. That's my website. You can also find me on Instagram at Sally Doll Sykes. I can put it in the chat. Will that work? Let's see.
Yeah, I'm going to write it. Empowered Health Consultants.
Yes. Meeting group chat. So, and then I'm at Sally. Whoops. Doll Sykes. And that's on Instagram. If you go to my Instagram, you'll find my link tree, which I could probably just put that in there too. And that has all of the links to my, podcast and website and all of the things.
Here we go.
But yeah, so what I do in my coaching, I just do regular health coaching. So you just need somebody to encourage you. But mainly what I do is the functional lab analysis, which people come and they say, I keep being told that I'm normal and I don't feel normal. And I say, okay, what are your symptoms? Ask your doctor for these lab tests. And when you get the results back, send them to me and we'll do a full analysis of them. And then I'll help you find a doctor who will actually help you. And EllieMD is one of the providers that I am on my recommended list which is super exciting. Where is the link tree? No, I don't know, but that's okay.
Any final words, Sally? Any recommendations?
No, just
Final
you
words?
guys, I wish I'd gotten to more of the questions. But reach out to me if you have more questions or if you need support. I'm really passionate about what I do, and I see all of these. Y'all, thank you so much. Y'all are so sweet. Because you're not alone. It's so hard, if you're a certain age, we kind of become invisible, and they just, if after we've had kids, it's like you're just go out to pasture and take your antidepressant and your sleeping pill and stop fussing and being a Karen. And you're important. What you're doing is important. You're helping people by connecting them to really important life-changing hormones, peptides, medications, and keep up the good work. Like, take care of yourselves and be the example that you want to see in the world, because you really are making a difference. These medications are changing lives, and you're part of that. And so whatever I can do to support you in your own health journey, reach out and let me know.
Oh, thank you so much, Sally, for being here. This was awesome. I love having you on. And thank you all for joining us on our weekly educational series. Thank you. I hope you had a lot of takeaways. Go share this with your communities. That's what we're here to do. Empower all, lift everyone together. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful night.